sportsradiodetroit.com.
Let's go out and leave it all on the field. It's going to start with us. We got to make plays in order for us to win. All you got to do is do your assignment, nothing more. Let's go. Playmakers on 3. 1, 2, 3, playmakers.
Matthew leans in, he's got it, wants to throw. Pressure comes up at the screen, got it to Riddick. Riddick to 15, Riddick 10, Riddick 5, Riddick end zone! Touchdown, Detroit Lions! He's to Abdullah, right side, got a hole. Abdullah 20, Abdullah 10, shakes the man at the 8, and dances into the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions! The action fake, he's gonna throw. Rhodes does, it is picked up by coming back the other way off the deflection. Glover Queen, back to the house. Touchdown, Detroit Lions! Oh, baby, a big takeaway for 6. 38 seconds left. Bradford's got it on third down. Sets and throws. It is intercepted. Darius Slay's got it at the 30. Slay inside the 25. Matthews got it. Looks right. Throws. Caught. Golden Tate. End zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Barkley takes the snap. Back to pass. Looks. Rolling. Hit. Still alive. Now he's not. Going down. Sack. Back outside the 50-yard line. Kerry Hyder's got it. Backing up, looking for somewhere to go. Stafford's going to tuck it and run. Stafford at the 5, 3, 2, 4, end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Oh, Matthew took it home.
Lions SRD on sportsradiodetroit.com.
Welcome to the latest edition of Lions SRD here on sportsradiodetroit.com. I'm Ben Salagi, joined with the martiferous one, Marty Stouffer, all the way out almost on the East Coast in Pennsylvania. Marty, we've had basically to put it mildly, an interesting weekend. Not only for the football game that the Lions played against the Falcons, which we'll get into, obviously. We found out a couple of things that were really, really interesting. Namely on Friday, what the president said. And before anyone turns off the podcast, it's not going to be a politically driven topic, just to kind of talk about it. And, there is no wrong or right. It's something that still needs to be clarified, because there's something that's obviously being turned into a pivot point that I think is becoming very dangerous, which we'll get to in a second. Then also I want to say Wednesday or Thursday of last week, out of nowhere, and Kyle Meineke of MLive has been on this since day one. He's had a sneaking suspicion that Jim Caldwell basically had been signed under an extension, and he felt this way now for over a month. He basically at the start of training camp, this is where we're going to start. Basically, around the start of training camp, he started to have a sneaking suspicion that Jim Caldwell has already signed his extension. And if fans remember, Jim Caldwell, his contract expired at the end of this season. And the Lions have gone to the playoffs twice in the 3 seasons he's been the head coach here. Caldwell has won a Super Bowl as the offensive coordinator with the Rams. He's obviously coached with the Colts and Peyton Manning. He's a guy who's respected. He's the first African-American head coach the Detroit Lions have ever had in the history of their franchise. So you can kind of say that this guy is special. The thing that doesn't make sense, though, is why the secrecy? Why have, Ron Wood, the multiple times he's been out in front of the media, never brought this up? Instead, it was always, hey, look at what we've done at Ford Field. New scoreboards, better Wi-Fi, better lighting, better sound, more concourse options. Oh, by the way, we signed our head coach to a multi-year extension. Why was that, never talked about? At least for me, that's a little weird. Marty, when you first heard the news, what was your initial reaction?
I was happy about it. We've talked about this before on this show, and look, I could be wrong here, but I don't see any candidates out there to replace him. I don't see any up-and-coming coordinators. I don't see anybody from the college ranks being able to be the guy to fill his shoes. So it kind of makes sense. And at times he's baffling, but it's a good signing. The team responds to him. Obviously, Martha and company think highly of him. it's a good signing. It brings some stability where this is a franchise that doesn't have stability. And now we've had Caldwell for, 3 seasons? Heading in, and now he's in his 4th?
Yep.
So, I mean, it's some stability. And now we'll have him for – I didn't see how long the contract was for, but we're going to have him for a few more years. And that's good. That's what you want. You want stability. To kind of parallel it to Pittsburgh here, Steelers have had like 4 head coaches in their history. Think about that. 4. And they're typically one of the most stable franchises in the league. So I think it says a lot. And the fact that they decided to extend Caldwell is great, but the secrecy thing was kind of weird. I'm with you on that. I don't know why it wasn't, hey, we signed our coach. I don't get it. But, I mean, I like the move. I think it was a great idea.
See, that's the thing that's interesting because you're right. There's something to be said for consistency. And you're right. The Fords, Ron Wood, Bob Quinn have all spoken highly of Jim Caldwell. They have. You can see that, this team kind of responds to him in a way. But there was a time not too long ago where, people wanted Jim Caldwell fired because he refused to fire Joe Lombardi. He refused to improve the offense. He basically had to be told by Martin Mayhew, look, this guy's gone. And whether you like it or not, this is going to be your new offensive coordinator. Lo and behold, it was Jim Bob Cooter, and it was one of the best promotions ever, basically going from quarterback coach to offensive coordinator. So I totally agree with you that there's something to be said for consistency. I just don't know if it's the right move because you look at it. Like I said, he refused to fire Joe Lombardi. He wanted to take all the blame, which a leader will do anyways. A leader's not going to blame other people. He's going to blame himself. So I don't necessarily fault him for that, but a leader knows when something needs to be fixed, and he refused to fix that. Now, what you have with the Terrell Austin and the defense, that was always, Terrell Austin is a respected coach. He's a guy, and whether you believe it's the Rooney Rule or not, he does get interviewed for head coaching jobs for the last 2 off seasons. He's made it to like the final 2 for multiple teams. He just hasn't been signed. But this defense has always been at least parts of this defense have been a strength for the Lions. The defensive front line has always been good. The linebacking core needed improvement. Bob Quinn went out and improved it through the draft in consecutive years. The secondary always had potential, but they needed to reach that potential. Certain players are starting to reach that, namely Nevin Lawson. You have a guy who's arguably one of the best players in the secondary in Glover Quinn, who was brought in by Martin Mayhew when he was available as a free agent from Houston. So it's not like you didn't have parts on this defense for this defense to be at least a middle-of-the-road defense. And when you have a middle-of-the-road defense in the NFL, chances are you're probably going to be in contention for a playoff spot. You can usually, if you have a bend it but don't break defense, your offense has to be a little bit better and more consistent. But if you have a good, reliable defense that's top 12 in the league, chances are you're going to go into the playoff. The higher up you're going to be in that 12, the more chances are you'll actually go to the NFC, AFC, championship and maybe the Super Bowl. So, but when I look at it, that's where I'm just so confused because Caldwell, anytime he was asked about it, and like I said, Kyle Meineke would always ask this at press conferences. The answer always was from Jim Caldwell, I've told you guys I'll answer it the same way now, and you can ask me 8 weeks down the road. I'm only concerned about a couple of things. It's my men and my mission. Our mission is to win. Everything else will take care of itself, and they aren't worried about anything else other than that, so that's our focus. But here's the thing that doesn't make sense to me. And again, it's the secrecy. Why, as a fan base, are people left in the dark when you think your head coach is literally fighting for his job? Because no matter what, you're going to have people in the stands watching games thinking to themselves, okay, any gaffe that's out there, whether the running game still doesn't develop, whether someone misses a tackle, you didn't use a challenge flag, or as an example, which we can get into later when we actually talk about the game, not saving a timeout to prevent a 10-second runoff for a rule that doesn't make sense. Key situations like that, people can blame on Caldwell and be like, you know what, but it's fine. At the end of the year, we're going to get X name. Maybe it's a Josh McDaniels. Maybe it's, someone else. But you're right, Marty. The names are, for quality candidates, are very few and far between. So you look at it from that sense, maybe it is the right move. But since I guess you're more of the fan out of the two, does that bother you that you were led to believe until late last week that Caldwell was fighting for his job?
No, because once the season starts, I stop worrying about the coach, and I just want to see the guys do what they need to do. That stuff can all be held in the offseason. Like, I'm glad Stafford got his contract done before the season started. Once the season started, I don't care about the contract. I want to see them perform on the field. So, no, it doesn't bother me at all that we were left in the dark. I mean, it's confusing, but it doesn't bother me.
Okay.
He said multiple times, I'm not worried about my contract, or I'm not worried about my future, or however he worded it.
Mm-hmm.
He said it multiple times. And that's, if you think about it, that's something we should have been tipped off about. Like, we should have been like, oh, well, okay, clearly, if he's not worried about it, they've either got something in the works, or, he could just be being blasé about it. But, we should have picked up on it, basically. He was like, no, I'm not worried about it at all.
Well, and right. And that's where, again, I give all the credit in the world to Kyle. Kyle he picked up on it. He's talked about it incessantly on Twitter. But here's another thing, though, too. What if, and this will be the last question on this topic, but what if Jim Bob Cooter goes up and is interviewing for head coaching jobs? Now that you have Caldwell locked in, you don't have the ability to keep him around and promise him the head coaching job and be like, look, this is his last year. You can take over the team. You've shown that you're capable of working with this offense. You gel with our franchise quarterback, which we just signed to the most lucrative deal in NFL history. He literally improves under your tutelage. That job can be yours. Does that at any point kind of worry you at some point that Austin or Jim Bob Cooter could eventually be head coaches and you're stuck with Caldwell? Do you think, because again, that's where I kind of go back to the Joe Lombardi thing where, maybe you don't necessarily get the best assistance because he's maybe loyal to a fault.
No, because I think Bob Quinn is not just focused on player personnel. I think he's also focused on coaching. Like, we talked about at the beginning of the season, do we trust Bob Quinn? Yeah, I do. I trust him. Here's the thing. He's got his eye on the prize. He's looking at every facet on how to make this team better, whether it's young players, whether it's free agents, whether it's coaching. He's got his finger on the pulse. He's not going to lead us blind. Does that mean I want to see Terrell Austin or Jim Bob Cooter go? No, absolutely not. You want to see the guys. You want to see them stick together for as long as they can while they're successful. But I mean, it's a business. It is what it is. So if they leave, I think Bob Quinn will find someone to step in and admirably do their job.
And that's completely fair, and that's why I love having you on the show, because you provided definitely a different perspective than I do, and it's okay that we agree to disagree. Moving forward, speaking of agreeing to disagreeing, because a lot of people don't want to agree to disagree at this point, because at this point being civil is not fun for people. And obviously I'm talking about what the president said on Friday to a group in Alabama, a group of supporters, where he basically said, and I'm not going to bleep this out because I think it needs to be heard, calling NFL players sons of bitches. And he's referring to players that take a knee during the anthem and saying that those sons of bitches need to be fired. The reason why I'm not going to edit that out is because it stings when you hear it. And I don't care if you voted Republican. I don't care if you voted independent, third party. I don't care if you voted Democrat. You cannot be this divisive as a leader of a country. You cannot be that unpresidential to in office, while you're on the record, while you're talking to people. There is a saying, and it goes back all the way to 2005 because every phone at that point started to have a camera and started to have the ability to record anything you said. And the saying says, always, at least this is in PR and in journalism, always assume you're always on camera. And the fact he doesn't care, the fact he's willing to be unpresidential and say those words, using those terms, where every single guy that goes into the Hall of Fame, not granted only 6 guys a year get to go, but every player, and this is just that small sample, you can tell that it's important to them. The first person they think is not their high school football coach. It may be God, but right after God, it's their mom. It is their mother. It is a person, because for some of these guys, they come up from single family homes where the mom did raise them, so they owe everything to them. And when you use that term, it's very unbecoming. And of course, what's getting lost in all of this, everyone wants to say, and the president is using it to further divide people, is that, oh, they're disrespecting the national anthem. No, they're not. Granted, when Colin Kaepernick was sitting on a bench, not participating in the national anthem, before it was caught, no one cared. And there's a lot of people that say, they always say before the national anthem, please rise in honor of those that have lost their lives. Well, okay. But they say remove your hats for those men and women that have lost their lives to protect your freedom of speech. The very First Amendment and the Bill of Rights that cannot be changed within this Constitution. Now, here's the thing. You're not protesting the military. I don't know where this narrative has come from. I don't know, Marty, where it came from. It just, people are now sticking with it and they're running with it. But apparently now you're protesting the military, the flag, and the national anthem. They're all entwined to each other. And you can even say it goes further down that list to police officers, which I don't know why or how police officers have, while, yes, their job is dangerous and we all love the job that they do, I don't consider a police officer on the same foot as a soldier. I just don't. Police officers are corrupt. I like to think soldiers, even though they can be corrupt, aren't corrupt because they are literally fighting to uphold our Constitution. That's it. They're making sure that you can live your life under the rules of the Constitution. Most soldiers, and even the soldiers that Colin Kaepernick has talked to, say, hey, don't sit. Kneel. We will respect you if you kneel during the national anthem in your peaceful protest. But here's the thing. It's not against the military. These guys, and it's been since day one that all of this has happened. It is about racial inequality. It is about men of certain colors of their skin, certain backgrounds, getting shot for no reason by police, being killed in their own streets while they're cooperating, even saying the words, yes, sir, no, sir, this is what I'm doing, sir. That is why the protests have happened. Even guys like Michael Bennett, even though we're still waiting for the full facts of the case to come out, said he was racially profiled in Vegas, and he's a multi-millionaire. So clearly money doesn't matter if you want to racial profile a guy. Now, again, facts still need to come out in that case, and we can reserve judgment for that. But you cannot say that, one, the president is not being presidential, because he's not. He's avoiding things and distracting you from important things, like a part of this country that's literally been ravaged by 2 hurricanes, and they don't have clean water, they don't have power, and yet he goes on Twitter and blames the infrastructure. He doesn't say, yeah, we're going to come to help. He's finally going to go to Puerto Rico and help one of our territories, which has tried to become a state, mind you, in aid, and you basically had to drag him out there to do it. He's poking fun and poking a bear at a very real threat in North Korea, where they have done over 22 missile tests since the beginning of the year. We now have bombers over that country. We have never come this close to war with North Korea since the Cold War. But yet no one wants to talk about that. They want to talk about, quote-unquote, entitled black men, spoiled brats, athletes that think that, they can just do whatever they want and disrespect our military and our flag. Well, I got news for you people. The flag is not a military symbol. The flag is like the Constitution. It represents your society. And when they're asking for just equal footing, which they still have not gotten since this country was founded, since the civil unrest of the 1960s, they're still not seen as equals. And that's what bothers me the most. You want to say they're entitled? How are they entitled? They're being paid for a skill that none of us can do. I'm sorry. I know I can't run a 4.340 and turn around on a dime and catch a ball that's probably being thrown 80 miles an hour past my head and still get 2 feet in bounds. I can't do that. I know, Marty, you can't do that. I know anyone listening to this podcast, unless an NFLer listens to this podcast, which if they do, that's awesome. I know none of you can do that. And they get paid rewardingly for it. Because you find that awe-inspiring. You find that awesome. And then they wear your team colors, so you root for them unconditionally. But for me, it is disgusting what has happened the past, 3-4 days? It's bled over into the NBA because now the Warriors don't want to go to the White House. Now, whether you want to agree with that or disagree with that, you can talk about that till you're blue in the face. We're not going to talk about that here. At least I won't. But then the president again goes to Twitter, says, you know what? You're uninvited. I don't want you here anyways. It's just very unpresidential.
He's like a 13-year-old child having a birthday party that doesn't want that one kid coming because that one kid, for whatever reason. Like, that's what Trump is, this whole, well, you're not invited because Steph Curry was on the fence about it. And I've seen this a lot. I mean, matter of fact, hockey season's right around the corner, so I'll kind of segue into this a little bit.
Sure.
The Penguins just accepted the invitation to go to the White House. I have no problem with that. That's fine. It's technically it's still an honor. But there's Ben. I don't know how familiar you are with him. There was a guy that played for the Penguins named George Laraque. He's thoroughly disgusted that the Penguins are going to the White House because of Trump. So I mean, it's a powder keg situation. It really is, and it's to the point where Ben, we've become good buddies over the past year and a half, 2 years. So you've seen my stuff on Facebook. My account blew up today because of a post I made, which I won't get into it because it's not a public account. But it was basically a comment, basically saying that Trump was a Nazi, and I think I'm somewhere around 78 comments. None of them too flattering toward me. But I mean, the whole protest, and Ben, you're right, the whole kneeling thing stems from Kaepernick and the racial inequality, which is complete garbage because this is the land of the free and the home of the brave, and it's the land of opportunity, unless you don't agree with Donald Trump, or unless you're raised to think that people of a different ethnicity are weak or inferior or whatever. Insert verb there, or the adjective, whatever. It's a sad state of affairs that we've come to this point. But I saw a lot of interviews. I want to say I saw 7 interviews over the past 2 days. One of them being Drew Brees, when he said, "You know what? We decided to unite for several reasons, and one of them is that Trump basically was trying to take away their First Amendment right to protest. If he would have kept his mouth shut, you would have seen probably the same handful of guys around the league kneeling, which is fine. I have no problem with that. But if he would have kept his mouth shut, you wouldn't have seen the displays that went around in 16 stadiums this year. You wouldn't have seen it. But Trump he had to get on Twitter, which drives me nuts, by the way, that he has time to tweet, and instead he's sitting there poking Kim Jong-un by calling him Rocket
Right.
He's I mean, my God, Ben, this is such a powder keg, and it's so bad. The guy's just an embarrassment. It is what it is, and it's absolutely disgusting and reprehensible that he's basically saying, no, you don't get to speak out, you don't get to protest, you don't get to exercise your First Amendment right. Well, yeah, we do. It's our right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's absolutely disgusting, and it's like you said, he's just trying to distract us from something else. But if that's the case, that kind of leads me to believe that if he's distracting us from something else, who's really running the country? Because it sure as hell ain't this clown. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, you're free to your opinion, and it's valid. And the thing that I find hysterical too, going back to Colin Kaepernick, had the Seahawks signed him, had the Ravens signed him, none of this happens. If they just gave him a shot, and if he washed out in the preseason, none of this happens. So owners and NFL GMs are complicit in this, which made Sunday and Monday even more weird. I'm not going to say laughable. I want to say laughable, but I'm not, because it's weird. Because there's 7 NFL owners known for a fact that have donated $1 million to Donald Trump for whatever reason. But yet they find an opportunity, and I guess it's a good thing because they are supporting their employees, they're supporting their players. But it makes me just kind of look at it and be like, aren't you being hypocritical? Like, I love Tom Brady as a player. As a person, I'm skeptical of him because he supported Donald Trump. But now all of a sudden he's gone too far, even though he's been unpresidential, even through his campaign. I mean, talking about grabbing women's body parts, saying he wanted to basically coerce a woman into infidelity and cheating on her husband because she basically had plastic surgery. All of this stuff. And I'm sorry, I don't want that of a president. I didn't like it when Clinton was found getting basically third base under his desk at the Oval Office. I think that's ridiculous. That's not presidential. It's not. It's disgusting. I mean, it's something that it's not just. My point is, it's not just one guy. You have to be presidential to a point. But that's what I found weird because if anyone gives Kaepernick a shot, and his stats before he got hurt proves he deserves a shot. If anyone gave him a shot, none of this happens. 2, I think it's really, really weird that the owners all of a sudden grew a conscience overnight. Now, granted, they may have done it because they know truly they can't alienate their fan base. Their fan base can be mad at them for a day or two, but then they're going to be mad at them for something else. Like maybe their stadium has poor Wi-Fi, or like if you're in LA, the Rams charge people in a 20,000 capacity stadium $100 to park their car, and you're not even parking it right next to the stadium. That's a general admission price to park your car. Be mad at your owner for that. See, there's going to be other things you can be mad at your owner for. So it's just weird that all of a sudden they just grow a conscience. And then just say, you know what? You can't talk to us that way. And you can't demand, us to do this. Now, a lot of people want to say that ratings are down, people are giving up on the NFL. I can honestly tell you that I don't think that's the case because the NFL now has made it to a point where you can stream games. Now, a computer and a tablet are seen as the exact same device in the digital world. A tablet is not a mobile device. A tablet is a computer. They still need to find ways, and Nielsen is working on this, to capture those rating numbers if you're streaming a game on Twitter or on Yahoo or wherever you're watching the game. Usually, if you need your internet provider to sign in, where they say, "Hey, are you a Spectrum customer, a Comcast customer, AT&T customer," and you click that button, they'll get the ratings off your box because they know that you've accessed your box to do that. That's just a little industry secret. But if you're watching it on your phone, and this is why it's been disabled on your phone unless you go to Verizon as an example. It's because they can't capture those numbers, and you can't use those numbers to tell advertisers, hey, look, if you buy a 30-second spot at X amount of millions of dollars for the season, we can guarantee you it'll get X impressions, which impressions basically means it will be seen by this many people. That's the only reason why the ratings are down, is because now we're growing in a digital age where you can have an illegal stream on Reddit, where you can get games. There's a way for you to hide if you're truly watching the game or not. And a lot of people, 26 and under, hell, 30 and under, are watching games that way. And you're going to lose the impressions. You're going to lose your ratings because of it. Ratings are going to drop off also because people are cutting the cord. So you're not necessarily automatically getting ratings from things like your Xbox if you're watching a game there, or PlayStation View, or Hulu or whatever. Nielsen and those ratings companies are catching up to it, but it's a slow process because it's, quite frankly, a lot of data to gather. But, people want to talk about and use it as another pivot point that all these protests are why people are not watching games. I'm sorry, I don't buy that for a second, not just because of what I just mentioned, but let's say, lo and behold, just as an example, the Lions are first place in the NFC North or second place in the NFC North, and they actually look complicit doing it. They actually look like they can be that team that actually looks different than the Lions. And they actually have a legit run to have home field advantage in the playoffs. You're telling me, as someone who has watched the Lions for, I don't know, let's say 30 years, like I have. I'm 32. I know I've been watching Lions football my whole life, even if I don't remember it until I was like 6 or 7. But I know I've been in front of that TV with my dad watching the Lions since I was a baby. So I can even say, I can cut that down and say 20 years, to be fair. I'm not just all of a sudden not going to be like, I'm not watching the Lions, I don't care. They protested back in September. I'm going to be like, no, hey, you guys want to go to a bar and see if maybe the Leos win a game? You're not just going to all of a sudden just be like, nah, I'm not interested. Of course you're going to be interested. Why? Because you don't want to be that one person at work around the water cooler that just said, not me, man. Didn't see that game. That's just never going to happen. It may work for a couple of weeks when you can lose a couple of games. Outside of that, you're not going to keep being that guy in a playoff push. Let's say the Lions actually win a playoff game. The second playoff win in 57 years. Oh, my goodness. You're not going to be like, yeah, man, didn't watch that because those guys took a knee back in September. You're not going to say that. You're going to be like, oh, my God, yeah, dude. See what Golden Tate did? Went over the middle, caught a game-winning touchdown. That's amazing. Or, dude, I was so skeptical Matthew Stafford signed that contract, but man, oh, man, I am so glad he's going to be here for 5 more years. You're gonna be that guy. You're gonna be invested in the team. So I don't want to call it a false narrative because I think it does have merit, so it is a narrative. But come on, you can't just say I'm done watching football. Sure, you can say that on the internet. You can say that to your friends, but are you really holding yourself accountable when you're bored on a Sunday afternoon and the Lions are playing the Vikings at 1 o'clock? No. At least not to me. I mean, it's something that the whole thing just aggravates me to no end. And I know that I don't really rant on this show, and I've now ranted twice in consecutive weeks. But come on. Marty, do you want to talk about the game and actually talk about stuff that matters?
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's be collectively mad at the NFL and the officials. We can do that, right? The Lions, obviously, you want to say that they get screwed. If you want to say that, half of me is going to agree with you. Marty, before we dive into it deeply, when you saw it happen in real time, and I'm sure you've watched the same play over and over again, what was your reaction? Do you think Golden Tate was down? Or do you think...
He was.
Okay.
Yeah, he absolutely was.
Okay. Because the reason why I wanted to ask is because part of me thinks he was down, part of me thinks he wasn't, And then part of me thinks he was still completing the process of the catch, which if that's the case, then he wasn't down. But you think he was down regardless?
Well, since you brought up that third point, I mean, that's valid. I never even considered that. But, I mean, his knee hit the ground before he crossed the plane.
Yeah.
So to me, he's down. That means he's down. Now, it's split second. It's knees down, bang, and then he's across the line. Like, within milliseconds is happening. Like, when it happened in real time, dude, if you saw my Twitter feed, I was going nuts. I'm like, dude, that's a game-winning touchdown. I'm like, of course, there was some profanities in there because I was really, really excited.
Oh, sure.
But, and I even told a couple people, they were like, oh, the ref screwed us. No, dude, they made the right call. Look at the angle. His knee's down before he crosses. But, of course, nobody wanted to hear that because, the NFL has it out for the Lions and blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, to me, he was down. I mean, I couldn't get mad at it, especially when Dean Blandino explained the rule as stupid as it is. I would have been content with just, okay, instead of the 10-second runoff, you get one more shot at it because he was down. Because, I mean, he was down. I want to say when they snapped the ball, it was like 13 seconds on the clock.
Right.
When they snapped the ball, something along those lines. I don't have it all. It's been a whirlwind. So I don't remember everything that happened. But, I mean, it was, okay, you now have 3 seconds on the clock here. Here you go. This is the game right here. And, who's to say they would have got that touchdown? We don't know. But I couldn't get mad at the call. If that's what the rule is, that's what the rule is. It is what it is. And you know what, dude? The guys put up a hell of a fight. Let's face it. The ground game looked competent. Not good, but competent.
Mm-hmm.
The passing game was a little sketchy until Matt Stafford went, oh, wait, that's right. I'm Matt Stafford. And then just started completing passes to everybody except for Ebron, which I'm sure we'll get into. But, I mean, they looked good. I mean, even without Jared Davis, they looked lost without Jared Davis. I said that as soon as that game started, I was like, oh, man, they look lost. But Tahir Whitehead did a serviceable job. I mean, you could tell that Davis wasn't out there. But, I mean, I can't get mad at that loss. I can't get mad at that rule or that call. It is what it is. We'll bounce back, and we'll just have to get the next one. That's all.
Yeah, and that's fair. And honestly, with me, this is why I hate the whole process of the catch and a football move. Because replay, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I know I've said it multiple times on Twitter. Replay has bastardized this game because you are able to see things in milliseconds that your eye can't see. I mean, it's just one of the things where, how can you say he's doing a football move and a catch, all of these things compound at once in microfractions of a second, and then you're going to be like, okay, yeah. So, like, when I'm looking at the play, I do see number 34 touching and kind of having his hand on Golden Tate because he's defending it. And Golden Tate's still going to the ground. I don't know if he secured the ball or not because in real time, it looks like he's not. In replay, it looks like he is because a picture does say 1,000 words, and you can make up those words at any point because it's a still image, which means it's an edited part of time. It is literally an edited fragment of time. You don't know what happened before, and you only assume what can happen after. But when you're looking at it in real time, he still looks like he's completing the catch. And to me, that's what I think is unfair in all of this, is that replay has gotten to the point where it makes football not fun to watch at the NFL level. I mean, here, like I've said as many times as I can, I'm more of a college football fan than I am a fan of the NFL. And in the Big Ten specifically, they stop like every other play to be like, hey, we're going to look at that, make sure we got it right. That's annoying. Like, I don't like that either. But, it's something that when you're looking at the totality of the rule is the rule. I mean, whether we like it or not, the rule is the rule. And if you have a 10-second runoff, my question is, where does that happen? They say it happens right when the ball is spotted after the play, and then the 10-second runoff happens. Well, my point is, how can you determine that? Because let's just say there was 13 seconds on the clock. It gets whittled down to 11. Even if you put 1 second left on the clock, that's enough for the ball to get snapped off. So even if he's ruled down, the clock has to stop at some point. So, but again, with the rule, you have to have the 10-second runoff. And I think that's where people are mad, is that if he's truly ruled down, how come we just don't start the clock where he's down? If he's ruled down with 2 seconds left on the clock, how come the Lions can't get the ball because you stopped time, you stopped the game, you have the ball set, and you see if they can get the snap off in 2 seconds? Maybe we do have another heroic Matt Stafford fake spike and him jumping over the pile and, extending the ball over the end zone. Maybe we do have one of those, heroic moments because the ball is at the 1 foot line at that point anyways. And I think that's what the frustrating part is that it's an arbitrary line and a rule that says you have to have a 10-second runoff unless you have a timeout. And I know a lot of people get angry with Jim Caldwell because he either doesn't challenge when people want him to, or he challenges and challenges a questionable play that is less than a 50-50 shot, so he's going to lose the timeout anyways. But this is why, late in games, normally Jim Caldwell has 2 timeouts left in the final drive of a game. Normally he does. And I would have to go back to when the Lions have done this miraculous fourth quarter comeback streak to actually pinpoint how many timeouts they have. But I think that would be an interesting piece because I honestly think at some point, except for maybe the Thanksgiving game last year, the Lions actually had a timeout or two that they just never used because one of the knocks on Jim Caldwell is his clock management is terrible and that he doesn't use all of his timeouts. So, that's another thing that baffles me about the whole situation, and it's inconsequential because it is what it is that's just the Lions didn't have a timeout. And you're just thinking to yourself, you're like, huh, because if they did, then yes, you avoid the 10-second runoff, you get the ball with 3 seconds left, and you do whatever you can. You give the ball to Akeem Ayers, who's 6'3", 290 pounds, and you just say, hey, I'm going to hand you the ball, run as hard as you can into the back of Graham Glasgow, and we'll push you in. I don't care. You do something like that, maybe. I don't know. But outside of that, I actually give the Lions a lot of credit. Even though they did leave points on the field in the first half, I was really unhappy with the first half because there was times the drive was going pretty good, and all of a sudden it stalled for whatever reason, and the Lions had to settle for a field goal. And to me, I was just to me that was frustrating. But then, of course, the second half happens, and the Lions are standing toe-to-toe with the Falcons, and the Lions, you're right, Marty, don't have Gerard Davis. They moved Graham Glasgow inside because Travis Swanson is injured. You have a guy who hasn't really playing at right guard, and it looked awful in the first half. But, all of these things were compounding the issues, and the Lions were still fighting. So it makes me raise the question that I raised, I think, when I did the solo show, is how real are the Lions? Because for me, I actually think that the Lions maybe are for real. Now, you can also argue maybe the Falcons suck because they almost lost to Chicago in week 1. They got lucky there, and they should have lost to the Lions because they got lucky there. They got bailed out by a rule. But I actually think the Lions are for real. I mean, even the defense adjusted. I mean, there was Austin Hooper, a tight end that can wreck a defensive game plan, was held in check. Austin Hooper didn't really do anything of note, which really, really surprised me. And I'm going to try to find his stats here. But yeah, he had 1 catch for 9 yards on 2 targets. I mean, Julio Jones, a guy that they targeted 12 times. They never let him get behind them. His longest catch was 18 yards. Taylor Gabriel only had a 40-yard catch because it was yak yardage. Because they took advantage of the linebackers, and they couldn't really get over, and that's how Gabriel scored. So the defense actually didn't look that bad. The running game still looked awful, at least, for some parts. Because you only had really one good effective weapon in Amir Abdullah. But outside of that, I mean, I'm not totally, basically my point is I'm not totally discouraged by this. Because a lot of people are going to say anyways, well, I still think the Lions are 3-0. In my head and in my heart, they're still 3-0. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, dude, you're an idiot. They lost. I'm actually going to be like, you know what? Maybe this team's good. Maybe this team is better than we think. I mean, what is your outlook on the year after seeing a game like this, especially a second half in which they did? They stood toe-to-toe with the Falcons, who went to the Super Bowl last year.
I think they're for real. I'm not going to sit there and peg them for the Super Bowl or playoffs or anything, but I think they're for real. I mean, this is a team that through 3 games already has, 9 or 10 turnovers, something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they had, 9 all of last year or something? So, I mean, this team, I don't know if it's the players that have adjusted and grown into their roles. I don't know if it's the personnel mix-ups or change-ups. I don't know. But the team looks legit. And, that defensive line, I'm going to say it, and Ben, you're going to laugh because I think you know where this is going. Anthony Zettel has ignited some life into that line like that last year.
Dude, I am not going to laugh. I'm right there. I even tweeted out in the preseason, I think Zettel is honestly one of the most improved Detroit Lions since year 1. I honestly do. And I don't really look at Pro Football Focus, but I know he continues to improve and grade out well. So I'm not going to laugh at you for that. It's evident. It's evident.
Yeah, you're right. It is. I mean, they even said during the game, they're like, yeah, okay, Ziggy Ansah's out there, or whatever. And they're like, but they've really got to start keying up on Anthony Zettel, who can be consistent and take some pressure off of him. So I mean, between Zettel, Ansah, Ashawn Robinson showing up again, Nada had a few good moments. You get Jared Davis, and that secondary's improved. Ben, I'm with you. I think they're for real. I'm right there with you.
I mean, yeah, it was something where, we look at what the Lions were. I mean, at one point, they were number 2 in the NFC. And I'm not saying the Lions are going to get there this year. I'm not even going to say they're going to win the NFC North. But I honestly think the Lions are going to be a team that you have to keep an eye out for. Because at first, when they beat the Giants, in my head, I was thinking the Giants were depleted. Well, the Falcons weren't depleted. Sure, they didn't have Vic Beasley, but they still had Brady Jarrett. They still had everyone else.
Yeah, they still had Tackerus McKinley.
Exactly. They still had guys who could impact and dominate. And they did. I mean, that defense didn't drop off by any stretch of the imagination. And again, the Lions stood toe-to-toe. And this defense is, I don't know what's gotten into this defense, but if they keep playing like this, causing turnovers, I mean, Darius Slay on Sunday had the best game I've ever seen him play as a Lion.
Yes.
I mean, he looked at the NFL MVP last year, whether you think Matt Ryan deserved it or not. He looked at the NFL MVP last year and didn't blink. Picked him off twice. I mean, this is something that we've seen year in and year out in this division with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, where he would just look down at the defense and he would maybe put the fear of God in these guys and make them question themselves. These guys weren't doing that. Instead, they were forcing the issue. They were getting turnovers. They were keeping, the offense in the game in the first half. And then in the second half, the offense was picking them up. I mean, that's not qualities and characteristics of a Lions team. And that's looking at it objectively. That's not drinking any Kool-Aid or looking through it through Honolulu blue and silver rimmed glasses. That is literally looking at it objectively. I mean, this is something that we rarely see from a Lions team. And that's why I'm not mad at what happened on Sunday. Sure, it would have been great that the Lions were one of the final 2 teams in the NFL that's undefeated. That would have been awesome. But I honestly think, you know what? Maybe this is something that's good for the Lions because they're going to be pissed off. They were already mad that on Monday night, everyone was talking about how bad the Giants were, not how great the Lions were. So maybe this helps them, keep having a chip on their shoulder. Maybe they actually get a division win for the first time since the early 90s. Maybe it does. Who knows? When it was the NFC Central, I think. It's just, I don't know. I'm not looking at Sunday and being dejected over a bad rule. I'm just not I'm not sitting here and being like, okay, well, this sucks. I mean, we can look at Eric Ebron and be like, dude, got it. What was that?
Yeah.
But I mean, outside of that, I'm not, like I said, I'm not dejected in any way, shape, or form. I'm not even going, Lions lost, typical. I'm actually kind of like, you know what? This is okay. Because the Lions are showing, and the first 8 games of the season are the toughest 8 games in this schedule. And so far, the Lions are looking like maybe it's not. And that's why, again, looking at it objectively, I'm not really concerned. If anything, I'm intrigued. But that's just me. What about you?
I'm right there with you. You said point blank, if they can come out of the first 8 games 4-4, they might have a good shot. And, that can happen. That can absolutely happen.
Yeah, it can. It can. And I know you wanted to talk about Eric Ebron, and it's something, again, obviously he has to make those catches. I mean, it's something that when you're targeted 7 times and you only catch 2 balls, you're never not going to be happy. But I'll let you take the floor there.
And not only that, you're targeted 7 times by a quarterback that does not use tight ends. He just doesn't. History shows he very rarely ever looks at tight end. He didn't do it with Pettigrew. He wasn't doing it with Fourier. He wasn't. He doesn't really look at Ebron if you think about it, but he's starting to. So when you've got the highest paid player in the league saying, "Hey, yo, dude, I'm coming to you. You need to step up." You can't be letting the ball hit you in the hands and then just hit the ground. You have to catch that. I mean, and I understand. They're not going to catch every ball. I get that. But I mean, he had soft coverage on him, and these are plays he should have made. But I can't get too mad at him because this is the 3rd game and it's the first time he's been kind of bad. The first 2 games he was really good. This one he was Eric Ebron. So it's kind of like, would the real Eric Ebron please stand up? Because I'm getting kind of confused as to what his role is, because he's a 1st-round pick. He's supposed to be an impact player, and he just hasn't been. His blocking has come on fairly well. Mm-hmm. He's a crisp route runner. I can't take that away from him. The guy can run a route, but I don't know if it's a lack of concentration. I don't know if it's pressure. I don't know what his deal is, but he's got to start making these catches. Yeah,
I mean, Marty, I have to agree with you. I mean, granted, they picked up his option, but it's something to where you have to look at it, and Bob Quinn's going to evaluate it and be like, look, this is what you're doing. We can't keep you. And, it's something, too, that, it was kind of a no-brainer because the Lions lack depth at tight end. So, you're going to bring him in. But if he keeps this up, Ebron's not going to be a Lion next year.
Right.
I mean, just knowing how Bob Quinn operates, he's not going to be like, look, I'll sign you to an extent. He's going to be like, I'm going to find someone else. We just have to go a different way. You're not earning your paycheck. You're not giving me a reason to sit down at this table and be like, you know what, we need you. So yeah, I mean, it's something that I do appreciate, whether it's lip service or not, him coming out and saying, look, I was god awful. I need to get better. That's on me. I'm going to work to improve.
He really did too. That's the funny thing. He point blank said that on Twitter.
Well, right. And that's what I'm saying. Like he did. But he's been saying this for 3 years.
Right.
It's just like, dude, you can't talk about it. You have to be about it. Do something about it. You can't just be like, you just can't give us lip service. You have to be this guy. You have to actually be this guy. I mean, I know 2, maybe now 3 years ago, he was using mean tweets as motivation during his workouts. It's like,
yep.
It's like, if that's truly the case, how are you not better? Like, how are you not getting better? Like, you led the league in drops last year. And then you have a game like this where you just look bad. against a quality opponent. I mean, you have to saddle up. You have to cowboy up at some point. And I mean, if you really want, and this isn't a contract year, so if you really want to get paid, not just by the Lions, but anywhere else in the league, put your money where your mouth is, at least for your own well-being. And if you have a family, do it for them. Don't do it for the fans. Don't do it to prove the fans wrong. Do it for you. Actually have a living. Say you actually played in the NFL for, 8-10 years and you were actually productive instead of a footnote as a disaster and a possible bust. Do something about it. And I think that's one thing, too, that's just been really, really frustrating with Eric Ebron, is that he's all talk. He's just like, I got to get better. It's on me. Well, okay. We're now year 3 of you saying this. Where is it? Where is it? I mean, at least Darren Fells, the one time he was thrown to, caught the ball. I mean, that was encouraging. But come on. I totally get the fans' frustration here whenever they, go nuts. But one thing that's interesting now, because in week 1, if the Bears would have won, the NFC North would have been undefeated. Now you have a 3-way tie at the NFC on top of the NFC North. 3 teams at 2-1. You have Detroit, Green Bay, and Minnesota. And Detroit gets Minnesota on Sunday at 1:00 on Fox, and you can definitely shake up the standings if you want to be that second team. Because I know a lot of people, Marty, are talking about Minnesota being the second team in this division. I don't want to say it's a statement game, but it's a game where you can kind of say, no, we're still here. What are your thoughts on the Minnesota game?
Well, seeing as a division game, it is a statement game, especially with Minnesota looking as good as they looked with Case freaking Keenum going off again. I don't know what it is with that guy, but just when you think that dude's down and out, look, last year he came in, torched the Lions. I mean, granted, it wasn't hard to do because the linebackers couldn't cover themselves with a blanket, but I mean, he torched the Lions. This past week, Keenum went out and threw for almost 400 yards and 3 touchdowns or something. It was just, it's a statement game for sure because they're doing it without their starting quarterback. Mm-hmm. And, we supposedly we're going to have all our chips on the table. We're going to have everybody back. So, I mean, it's absolutely a statement game because Dalvin Cook has looked every bit the part that he was supposed to be. Keenum's looked good. Bradford, when he's been healthy, has looked good. The 3 receivers whose name nobody in the world can remember, they've all looked good. It's just they look like they're legit. So I absolutely think it's a statement game.
And that's completely fair because I know a lot of people, especially what happened after last Sunday, and especially with how good they looked on a national stage on Monday Night Football 2 weeks ago, are going to look to Sunday and say, you know what? Let's see what happens. Because if the Lions are 3-1, this town's still going to go nuts. This town is going to be really, really excited, really invigorated. And it's like I said before, it's all good when the Lions are winning. I mean, because it's something that this town, for whatever reason, rallies more behind the Lions than they do the Pistons, the Red Wings, and the Tigers combined. I mean, they really do. So if the Lions are doing well, this town's going to be doing well, and that's not anything bad for this city. But outside of that, I don't have any other topics to talk about. What about you, Marty?
No, sir.
All right. Well, obviously here at Sports Radio Detroit, we have Lions SRD. We have Tigers SRD, but the season's likely over, so they're going to be wrapping that up. But Spinning the Wheels is officially back for its 2nd season. You can catch Jason, Steve, and Justin all talking about the Red Wings. Obviously, excitement there because of Little Caesars Arena. We do have some Pistons coverage from Media Day earlier this week. You could read those articles. I was there. But also, we're going to be starting actually a Pistons podcast finally. Marquise is going to step to the plate and talk Pistons, which is exciting, and because I think Marquise does quality work. I really do. If you listen, I was going to say, yeah, he really does. If you listen to Fanarchy, which is an entertainment-based show, but I mean, there's also sports sprinkled in there, obviously. But he's just really, really smart. I mean, he really is. I think he's underrated, to be quite honest. It's an interesting show. Granted, not for everyone, but I think it's interesting, and you can listen to Marquise either on the new Pistons podcast or on Fanarchy. If you want to listen to them live, it's from 4 to 6 on Saturday at crbradio.com or on demand here at sportsradiodetroit.com. The SRD Road Show is on Saturday from 9 to 11 on crbradio.com, on demand here as well. Same thing with Saturday Tailgate with Jeremy Stover. That follows the Road Show. That is 11 to 12 on Saturdays. And, of course, if you don't want to catch Jeremy talking there, catch him on Sunday morning while you're having coffee and reading a paper, getting ready for Lions football, because he and Eric have Mitten Sports Talk on Sundays from 10 to 12. We have the laugh tracks if you're curious, if you need to see, It or something like that. I know they've done a review there. It's, really good stuff. These guys know what they're talking about. The Set Piece is back. They talk about International League Soccer, the other type of football. We just have a lot of content for you, and I know I'm probably missing a couple of things. I know one thing I did miss, Out of Bounds. I don't know how I could miss that. They're on twice a week, every Monday and Thursday on Facebook Live, like their Facebook page. If you don't want to do that, catch them on Tuesdays and Fridays on demand. And if you like high school football, we will be broadcasting live because it's a home game for Wyandotte football. As it's homecoming for the Bears. The Bears are 5-0, looking to win their first Downriver League championship in 4 years. They welcome Trenton to Jim Johnston Field in Wyandotte, Michigan, where they hope to go 6-0. Trenton knocked off Allen Park week 1, so Trenton is a dangerous team. So if you want to listen to that live, just go to the website, click the Bear logo, and you can listen to me and Roger bring that game live to your living room, if you're sitting in the stands at Jim Johnston Field. Well, we can actually talk about the game for you as you're soaking in high school football under the lights on Friday. But that's all the time that we have here on Lions SRD. For Marty Stouffer, I'm Ben Salagi. Marty, what do we say?
We say good night.
Good night.